0 seconds for Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. The fight fell apart day of. And now 26 seconds for Francis Ngannou and Cain Velasquez. And each fight is its own entity. But as a sports fan, I get so jacked for these UFC main events. All three of those fights. Just so goddamn excited. And in all three of those fights, we have gotten 58 seconds of MMA action.
Yeah, listen, I think as far as the Henry Cejudo and Dillashaw fight, that is just the way that MMA goes, right? I mean, the fight can end in an instant. That's the thing. That's what makes it so exciting. That's why you're at the edge of your seat. And, you know, of course, we've seen over the years that mixed martial arts takes its toll on your body. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Your immune system goes down when you're making weight cuts, and people get sick, and there's injuries, obviously, with just the nature of the training in this sport. And unfortunately, we experienced just kind of a freak thing in this fight in Ngannou and Velasquez, where Ngannou landed a shot. It was a nice short uppercut, and knocked Velasquez off balance, and he tweaked his knee wrong. You know, it was really unfortunate because, like you said, this was a fight that I was looking forward to for a long time. And, you know, the result, whatever, you know, I got my pick wrong. Who cares? The big thing on this was we wanted to see a fight either way. And it feels like we just never got it. And that's the problem with this one, right?
Well, I felt more shortchanged with Dillashaw Cejudo, to be honest with you. And I think we disagree a little bit on this main event, and maybe it'll make for some good conversation. So you tweeted and you just said that he knocked Cain Velasquez off balance. See, I think it was a little more than that, right? I believe Francis Ngannou is LeBron James. He is a freak of nature. He shakes your hand, you never forget it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime type of physical specimen that I can't ever recall being around before. So you're right. He did not separate Cain from consciousness. He was never out, obviously, right? But the nature of his power is such that it hurt Cain, resulting in the knee to buckle. I can't sit here and say whether or not the referee stopped the fight because he saw the knee go out and he stopped the fight due to injury. Maybe he's gone on the record and addressed that, or because he thought that it was the beginning of the end for Cain. But I just think that for Francis Ngannou, maybe he deserves more credit for, you know, some of the wrestling strides he's made. It's, again, a short sample size, this fight and the Blades fight. But I think that people are kind of taken away from the win a little bit. And at least when I see the replays, it looked like a clean connection to me.
No, and it was. He landed the shot. He clearly shifted the weight of a 240-pound heavyweight wrestler and threw him off balance. There's no doubt about it. Was it the shot that knocked him out or separated him from consciousness even for a second? I don't believe so. Right. And actually, if you look at one of the replays, as Cain is dropping and he's on his shoulder, he looks at the referee and says, "My knee." So this was before the end of the fight. So, and clearly you see on the replay of the stress on the MCL, the inside lateral ligament, ligament there on the inside of his right knee buckle. And again, that probably wouldn't have happened, or most likely wouldn't have happened, if it wasn't for that short right uppercut from Ngannou. So you're right on that. I mean, it's not like he kind of just slipped and fell. It was because of the shot of Ngannou. And Ngannou does have that freakish kind of power. But he wasn't able to knock out Cain last night. And it's unfortunate. I wanted to see a longer fight. I wanted to see if Ngannou was able to stop that takedown. He did have the ability to at least get an underhook and stop Cain from at least one of those takedown attempts. Right. That was good to see. But I think for a lot of people, we wanted to see can Ngannou, do that for 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 5 rounds. And for Cain, we wanted to see, hey, is this guy the old Cain, or is he a new Cain, or is he washed up Cain? And we never really got to have any of those answers. So that's why, it left us, or left myself, I should say, I speak for myself, wanting for much more.
No, I agree. And I do believe that Cain, and he said it himself, and we sat down with him. I had the best 15 minutes with Cain Velasquez we've ever had. He was verbose. He was energetic. He was excited to be there. more so than ever before in his UFC career. This was a different Cain Velasquez than we had ever seen before, mentally, physically. His body, he was never more confident in his body. I mean, I couldn't even get that out of my mouth before his body gave out on him. I mean, it was just crazy how it all played out, but he just sat across from us full of conviction, and he just felt like Ngannou was very beatable with the right strategy. I'm just not sure how beatable this guy is, right? And I know Daniel Cormier thinks that this is a winnable fight and a good matchup for him. I can't speak to how Ngannou's going to be energy-wise, even when a round begins on the feet, round 5 in a championship setting, okay? But I kind of want your take on to what extent you agree with me that this is truly a man among boys, right? Just I am blown away by the physical stature and the presence of this larger than life human being, right? Like, so I want your take on that. And ultimately what you think about his prospects against somebody like Daniel Cormier.
Well, listen, it is clear that this guy has some God-given gifts that are extremely rare. Specifically in mixed martial arts. This guy is a mountain of a man. He is built like a fighter. He has excellent speed, amazing power. And it seems like he truly is fighting with this renewed energy and this idea of going out there and having fun and not being gun shy. And, you know, we've been seeing that so far in his last fight against Blades and here against Cain. He is letting his hands go. He's moving very well. And I think that there is a tremendous amount of potential in that guy. He just needs to continually train every single day, especially on his grappling skills. And obviously his striking skills are always going to be there. His power is always going to be there. But if this guy is able to wrestle, you're going to be in trouble. And that's a fight, you know, immediately when I saw Daniel Cormier's comments that he's like, I'm not going to fight him. I'm going to beat him. Right. At 40 years old, or as he's approaching 40 now, and DC being a smaller heavyweight, that's a fight that really makes me nervous. I mean, anytime DC fights, it always makes me nervous. You know, he's such a nice guy. We forget how much of a badass he is, one of the greatest to ever do it. And I imagine that if he gets in on the legs of Ngannou, he's going to go for a ride. I mean, there's a big difference between even a high-level college wrestler and an Olympic-level wrestler like a Daniel Cormier. And with all the experience that he has in mixed martial arts, I imagine that he would give Ngannou a tough time. But if he doesn't get there, if Ngannou's able to catch him on the way in, and sometimes DC gets caught on the outside and on the inside, we saw what happened with Stipe Miocic. Miocic was landing some shots. Miocic does not have the kind of power that Francis Ngannou has. And if he makes that same mistake, if DC allows Ngannou to land a few of those shots that Miocic landed early on in the fight, it could be over. That's something that makes me very nervous. Ngannou's fist is probably the size of Daniel's head. I mean, it's amazing that DC has had so much success at heavyweight. Ngannou's a proper heavyweight, man. It's Brock Lesnar's size, but with a dude who has insane kind of power, and that's a fight that would definitely make me nervous, man.
I mean, Ngannou is just such an athlete, right? I can't even imagine what type of American football player he could have been. I'm not even sure that if he applied himself for 2 years, he couldn't play defensive line in the NFL, right? And maybe I'm overstating it, and I don't mean to take away from guys like Chandler Jones, John Jones's brother, who a couple off seasons ago signed the most lucrative free agent contract at that time, $82.5 million, right? But I see Francis Ngannou, I see him, you know, dudes like LeBron James, man, you know, and Cain Velasquez, if he wasn't the best MMA heavyweight or the consensus best MMA heavyweight of all time going in there, he was certainly one of the top 3. That's why Ngannou's been calling for this fight since he lost to Stipe. But that Stipe Miocic fight, there were a lot of learning lessons. The Derek Lewis fight is such a strange outlier at this point in time, right? It makes no logical sense. But the Stipe fight, you know, people lose sight of the fact that the last thing Ngannou was looking for was a way out. He did stay in that fight for 25 minutes. He wasn't covering up, with all due respect to guys like Frank Mir and Chael Sonnen, who just, you know, end their misery and live to fight another day. And Ngannou stayed in there for those 25 minutes. He has a mean, nasty streak, right? We've seen him land an extra blow, Kenny, right? Like he is a classy beast, right? Like he's a classy guy, but when he's in there, man, like the referee's gonna have to pull him off there, you know. So there's an animalistic nature to him, and we'll see. Could be the first African-born UFC champion sooner rather than later. Anything else on that fight, Ken Flo, before we move on? I do think Velasquez will fight again. You know, I don't want to read too much into the way he left the octagon under his own power and seemingly walking pretty well, because I know you can walk around with a torn ACL.
Sure.
But hopefully the damage isn't too bad. He did say he heard a pop, so we'll see.
Yeah, I actually tore my MCL. I think who was I supposed to fight? Evan Dunham, I think, and I had to pull out of that fight. I tore my MCL training, and it was a very similar fashion. And for the MCL, if that's what it is, it's not something that they do surgery on typically. And you know, the rehab, rest, and he should be good to go, hopefully in a couple months. So my heart just broke for Cain Velasquez. He's such a good guy. He was so ready to go. He's been one of the most exciting fighters in UFC history. Certainly one of the best heavyweights, if not the best heavyweight of all time. And I hope we see him again in the octagon soon. What's
so strange for him is just that he put in the training camp of his life. He was conceivably never more prepared than he was, and his 36-year-old body held up through a very intense training camp, right? So for him, he's just out of answers, right? It's like you got to get through the training camp, and then you get to shine on fight night, and then the body gives out 20 seconds in.
And it's been a few things, John. It's been his shoulder. His back has been really bad for a long time. That really has been the culprit and what's kept him out of the UFC for a long time. So the fact that he was able to battle back from all of those things, and we see a short fight like this against Ngannou, just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm sure in his. And I hope mentally and physically he'll be okay.